We'll start the evening with a prayer by our director, Dr. Nandakumara, MBE.
Namaste, a prayer from the Vedas. May we all see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we all hear with our ears what is auspicious. With healthy body, mind and spirit, may we be able to dedicate ourselves for the cause of humanity. May the celestial beings shower their choicest blessings on us so that we may all develop a sense of sacrifice in our lives. May there be peace, peace and real peace. Om Bhadram Karne Vishnunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Estuštuvagum Sastanubhi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayu Swasti na Indra Vruddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The world is one family. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Hence, friends, let noble thoughts come to us from every side. Anu Bhadraha Kratavo Yantu Vishwataha. Now, over to my colleague, Meera Vinaya.
Namaste, distinguished guests. My name is Meera and I head the operations and business development at the Bhavan. Wisdom and leadership, these are not just concepts, but forces that shape the world. True leadership goes beyond titles. It is the power to inspire, transform, and lead with purpose. Tonight, we are honored to hear from a leader whose actions embody these very qualities. A visionary whose intellect, strategic insight, and profound impact have left a lasting mark across industries and communities. This evening's MP Birla Memorial Talk will explore leadership lessons from ancient Indian traditions, offering us a timeless perspective on navigating today's dynamic world. Udyamaha sahasam dhairyam buddhihi shaktihi parakramaha shadete yatra vartante tatra daivam sahayakruta, which translates to, where these 6 qualities exist: industriousness, courage, patience, intelligence, strength, and fearlessness, even the divine lends support. These very qualities define the journey of our esteemed speaker. His career spans continents and industries, from pharmaceuticals to FMCG, from consulting to banking. He has held senior executive leadership roles, steering organizations towards innovation and impact. He is currently the managing partner of new Rhein Healthcare Investors and also serves as the chairman of Bharatiya Vidya, Bhavan, London. Prior to that, he was a director at the Gates Foundation and the MD and global CEO of Cipla. He has been an EC member of Novartis Pharma in the past also. An alumnus of Oxford University, he holds an MA in Engineering Science and an MBA from INSEAD. He speaks 6 languages and is a dedicated teacher of Sanskrit and Vedanta. His commitment to knowledge extends beyond business. He serves on Imperial College London's Endowment and Governance Board, helping shape institutions that thrive on innovation and excellence. Beyond all these accolades, what truly sets him apart is his ability to make things happen, something that I have witnessed personally. He just does not speak about ideas, he actually executes them with precision, passion, and unwavering commitment to excellence. It is an honor to welcome a leader whose wisdom, dedication, and action-oriented approach continues to inspire many, including myself. Please join me in welcoming this evening's speaker, Mr. Subhanu Saxena.
Thank you, Meera. After that introduction, I think I should go home. It'd be hard to live up to. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sangachadvam Samvadadvam Sambho Manaamsi Janatam Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sanjanana Upasate Samano Mantras Samitis Samani Samanam Manassaha Chittame Esham Samanam Mantram Abhimantrayeva Samane Navo Havisha Jomi Samani Vaakutis Samana Hridayani Vaha Samanamastu Vo Mano Yatha Vasu Sahasati. Friends, a very warm welcome from myself, the staff, the teachers and students to the Bhavan. Show of hands, who's here for the first time? Excellent, excellent. So the ulterior motive for bringing you here is to introduce our wonderful Bhavan. You just saw in the video, Bhavan means haven. We believe we're a haven for the arts and cultures of Indian traditions here in the UK. We've had thousands of students come through who've now become teachers in their own right, bringing arts and cultures. We believe the arts, the music, the dance traditions of India help to unite communities. So we're delighted you're here. We hope you like your first taster of the Bhavan. Those mantras were the very final hymn of the Rig Veda, a grand hymn to unity. It's a call to humankind, to leaders, to be leaders who unite. Come, let us speak together. Let us be of one mind. Let us have common purpose, common aim. Let us be as one, hearts as one. And we seem to live in an age where the model of leadership is to divide, instill fear, to play on insecurities. And the question is, well, is there another model? Well, what I just want to do today is to open a window for you so you can see for yourselves, what do the ancient teachings of India have to say about these topics? And then it's up to you to say, do I want to take some of those on board or not? Caveat, I don't claim to be an expert. I'm a student, like all of you, of leadership, of life. And I want to just share with you my own experiences and how these teachings impacted me in my day-to-day life. The other caveat is we're not presenting you tools where you go and just quickly tick them off and become a better leader, all right? It's not like, learning how to kind of work a lathe. The teachings of ancient India are a deep, profound journey of self-discovery and awareness of how to live a fulfilled life of giving and meaning and be able to share that with others. If you happen to be a leader on the side of that, that's great. If not, that's also great. So please don't think you're here with there won't be a 3-hour test to see what you've learned. But I would ask you, the objectives would be to give you some food for thought. Hopefully, some of what you hear, you'll say that's obvious. Hopefully, some will say, you go, huh? But hopefully, we inspire you to say, I want to learn a bit more. Or there's one thing I've heard that I can imbibe into my daily practice, whether it's at work, at home. And if we can do that, then I think we've been successful. I'm conscious that in these talks, we have people at different levels. Some people have studied Sanskrit or some of these texts, some haven't. So I've been inspired by a famous book on on general relativity, gravitation, by Kip Thorne and others. He was executive producer of Interstellar and Contact. In their book, they have 2 tracks. Track 1 is the high-level track for the first level, and track 2 is the higher level. You will see on the slides, I have added various Sanskrit verses that illuminate the points I'm making. Sometimes I see, you go online, people quote something from Rumi or from Gandhi, and you go and try and find the quote, and someone just made it up in a pub and put their name on it. So I just wanted you to know where these come from. Don't worry about it if you see them and it's something new for you. For those who are interested in the original references, please let Meera know afterwards, and I will send just a summary of each of the mantras and shlokas with an English translation, so you can have them for your bedtime reading, if that's okay. Is that a good plan for the day?
Yeah.
Excellent. So if we go to the next slide, what do these situations have in common? Who knows what some of these things are? Throanus was a device, a diagnostic device. It was the darling of Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and we found out the data was all made up. Okay? Most of you know the Enron story, how they cooked the books and falsely reported, again, the darling, and then they collapsed. It looks a bit like the share price of another company right now, but I won't go into that. Uber, toxic workplace, the complaints that came. We all lived through the VW settlement on the scam on emissions, and our data was falsified and covered up. And Wells Fargo, they created dummy accounts, dummy applications to bolster their sense of achievement. What do they have in common? Just click the next button. I would argue it's a failure of leadership. And I think it's important to recognize, there's a simple truth. Managers manage, leaders create climate and environment. You create a toxic environment, or you show up with toxic energy, guess what? However good the people are around you, it permeates an organization. And the impact you have in any situation is far greater than you realize. Spoiler alert, that's not just as a leader. It's as a husband, a wife, a daughter, or a son. The energy you bring impacts those around you. And the higher you are, the more people under you, the greater the impact for good, but also the greater the negative impact. I'm deliberately not going to get into any of the current geopolitics that's happening in the world right now. There are others who are far more adept at commenting on it. But the question is, can we think of a mindset, a way of thinking about how one should show up in the world and lead, that maybe gives us a chance of a different way of driving positive impact? If you just go to the next slide. I have slides, by the way, because it's a corporate group, but I'll mainly talk, so they'll be in the background. And this tension of what's the right thing to do, driven by material success. I presume many of you are here because you want to find a deeper meaning and purpose in what you do. And you find that hard. And that's the human condition. But the fact that you're here and interested is a great start. But this is a day-to-day struggle for all of us. And so let's see if we can give you some food for thought as we go through the evening. If we just go to the next slide. Some of the questions we're going to cover. Can an introspective, mindful leader be externally active and impactful? What's that link between one's personal journey of self-discovery and uniting others around some common goal and purpose? Are those mutually exclusive or actually complementary? What can help you unlock inner joy and energy to inspire others? And what practices can create those conditions for inner knowledge, personal growth that can benefit others? And there the Upanishads are very clear. They say, look, we're built to look outside. This is from the Katha Upanishad. Paranti khani vyatranat swayambhuhu. Tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman. We are built to be externally focused. So we look outside for all the answers. We don't look within. However, kaschid dhiraha, the odd wise person, pratyagatmanamekshate, is able to turn the eye inwards. Avritta chakshuhu, eyes come in, amritatvamichan, seeking immortality. We'll talk a lot about what does it mean to be an introspective, mindful leader, but then a leader that's still supremely active and engaged in this world. That's the kind of the balance that our traditions teach us. And that first insight that the answers to the universe, some are out there, but many are in here. And you have to balance that outward gaze with the inner eye to be open to these teachings. If we just go to the next slide. How did I find inspiration in these teachings? Well, the original inspiration, I call my Nana, my mother's dad, my first guru. We come from a family of classically trained musicians and dancers. Not me, but my mother, my lovely mother who's here, was an accomplished Kathak dancer in her youth. And her father was trained with Birju Maharaj's uncle. And we had ghazals and Urdu poetry growing up. And he would say to me, "Beta, tumhe isme Bhavan milega." Son, you'll find God in this poetry. And through that tradition, he gave us a love of learning, of that deeper understanding of life. We would sit till 2, 3 in the morning reciting Urdu poems back and forth. Later on, when I learned Sanskrit, I would say a Sanskrit verse, he'd give me the response in an Urdu verse. And there were certain texts that really impacted me. Madhushala by Bachchan was one. His go-to book was a novel called Chitralekha. He underlined passages and taught us about life. He said that book's all about very simple. Punya kya hai, paap kya hai? What is good living? What is sinful living? And through that, that inspired me to just have an interest in things more philosophical growing up. And he would say to me, look, I'm teaching you this Urdu verse. You won't understand it for 40 years, but learn it now. And lo and behold, recently when things come up, that verse comes to me and it just gives me that illumination when I need it. It's amazing. Then what happened at university was all my friends made me the token expert in our tradition for various reasons. I don't want to go into it here. And I felt completely inadequate to answer those questions. So I said to my parents, bring me some books, I need to mug up on this stuff to really answer all these questions of what this person said, or, what this, I was there. I helped the Hare Krishna movement set up vegetarian cooking classes. And at the end, they'd have a little lecture. Some of the things they would say resonated, some didn't. I'd try and ask questions. They would throw a Sanskrit verse at me. I couldn't answer it. I said, this is not good enough. So they got me some various books. A.C. Bose, The Call of the Vedas, one of the finest collection of Vedic mantras translated by English professor. And Swami Jit Bhavananda's Gita, one of the best translations of Gita I've ever read. The Advaita Ashrama editions of the Upanishads with Shankaracharya's commentary. And I read those. In some places I could see there was something here. In other places, to be honest, it felt like a hippie had written it. The translation, there was something missing. And I knew that from Urdu poetry, right? And so I must have casually said to my parents, you should ask my mum later how it came up. I said, it's no good unless I learn some Sanskrit. So for my graduation present from Oxford, they got me 1 year Sanskrit classes here at the Bhavan. And that's where the star of the show really comes into the picture, which is our dear friend Dr. Nanda Kumara sitting in the corner. I remember going to the very first lesson, and I was lost to the language. A couple of things he said. He took a simple word like Himalaya, right? The Himalayas. What does it mean? Himasya Alaya, temple of ice. I can't look at them as mountains anymore. Tapas, the word for austerity or penance. I used to think, oh, that's like standing on one leg for 20 years and all this stuff. So tap means to burn. Burning what? Ego. Any act of charity or service that helps you dissolve your ego is an act of penance. I thought, wow, I want more of this. Luckily, some of the other students didn't get the same memo as me, and they all dropped out after about, 2 months? So I had one-on-one accelerated training with Dr. Nandaji, and after a year he said, you've learned now, let's get you teaching. And there, the works there then introduced me. I remember I used to live just over here, and I was sitting one evening thinking, wouldn't it be lovely to learn the Vedas? But I'm sitting here in the UK, no chance. I had heard that when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Right? I never really believed it. I go to the Bhavan, you had the Ramayana class on a Tuesday. And you said, oh, by the way, my brother's visiting. He's a Vedic scholar. I thought, whoa. And when he came, Sri Chandrasekhara, I remember the moment I met him, I cannot explain it to this day, I was somehow lost to him. And he very graciously took me and a friend and some who are in the room now to teach us Vedic mantras. The traditional way of learning Vedas is you commit to memory. And the whole Yajurveda, people can recite for 48 hours non-stop from memory. I got as far as about 12 hours because I had the day job. But you know, every evening I was at Citicorp Investment Bank, I'd come and sit here, learn the mantras. And then I went to India. Before I got into INSEAD, before I went to INSEAD, I thought I need to continue my training. Before I went, Mathurji took me into his office. He looked at my hand and he said, in 6 months, Subhanu, you'll be married. I said, what? I'm going to go and study Vedas in the village. But that was on the trip when I met my lovely wife, who's here in the front. I take it as everyone's blessings, my guru's blessings. But I studied there in India, and there I met in Nanda's village. Those of you who may know, it's called Mathur. It's a village where people can speak in Sanskrit. It's a village full of Vedic scholars. Nanda's family are the Purohits, the priests for all the other scholars. So I was very fortunate to meet people of such high learning. And I met Nanda's childhood friend, Shri Ashwatha Narayana Vadhani. His students have become great swamis across India. He taught me Advaita Vedanta according to the tradition of Shankaracharya. And I just lapped it up. It was just this incredible, deep, profound teachings of the fundamental workings of us, the universe, and our relationship to. We will come on to some of that in a minute. One of his students Shankara's students was also a big influence on me. And then over time, well, how do you put it into practice? And I have to say my go-to inspiration has always been the Mahabharata. There's a famous verse about the Mahabharata. Dharmecha arthecha kamecha mokshecha bharatarishabha yadi hasti tadanyatra yanne hasti na kutrachit. In matters of dharma, right conduct, artha, acquisition of wealth, kama, desire, moksha, liberation, meaning everything in the human condition. If it's in this book, you may find it elsewhere. If it's not in this book, you won't find it anywhere. You find the sacred, the profane. It's a story of violence. It's a story of peace and people living, making tough decisions about their life. And I found it incredible. Growing up, people would say, I don't know if it's happened in some of your households, don't keep Mahabharata in your house, there'll be a war in your house. It's the fifth Veda, we call it. There's the wisdom there, and there's certain sections. Obviously the Gita, you'll hear a number of quotes from the Gita as we go through. Shanti Parva, we'll come back to that one. Just make a little note, Shanti Parva, right? And various dialogues, Yaksha Prashna and others you see there. But some great stories. So Dharma Vyadha, who's heard of Dharma Vyadha? No one. See, there was this sage, Kaushik, who learned the Vedas, did all of, kind of what I was talking about, and was really full of himself. He had the power to kind of burn animals to ashes and so on. And he goes into town and he shows up at a house and wants to be served. And the wife says, hang on, I'm just busy taking care of my sick husband. And what? I'm here, I'm a learned, you should come and worship me. Sound familiar how some modern age gurus talk, right? And she rebukes him and tells, look, my duty is to take care of my unwell husband. You can wait. What's the rush? And he was shocked. And he realized, okay, I'm missing something. She says, look, and he says, teach me more. And he says, I'm not the person, but in the center of town, there's a butcher, Dharma Vyadha. A butcher. Learn from him. And he's confused. He's like, someone who cuts up and serves meat? And he goes, and Dharma Vyadha gives us some of those most profound teachings of living a life of purpose, of service, whatever it happens to be, and what your inner energy is in any work, how you bring it to everything you do, and inspired with Dharma Vyadha. Pingala, who's heard of Pingala Gita? Again, nobody. We've got to find a way to get these stories out. She was a courtesan. It's a polite word, but courtesan. She had realization when she was stood up by a client of, why am I serving these external pleasures? And it's a very short, it's a few shlokas. And she literally goes through thought experiments as to why she is, where she's going. And she realizes some profound truths of her eternal nature. How the whole universe of joy is already within her. Why does she need to seek it outside? It's amazing. 10 verses. Teachings from a woman. So many of you, right? Some of the greatest teachings in our texts come from women. Bhagavad Gita. No one's heard of them. But over time, that further deepening through other sources, Ramayana, various famous Upanishads verses, we'll give you some of those. Chanakya was a sage who was the advisor to the great Emperor Chandragupta Maurya. You'll find it online, but the US Army College studies Chanakya and teaches Chanakya to the US Army kind of officers corps. We have some wonderful quotes from Chanakya as we go through. Then later in life, there's a very famous verse in the ancient tradition, Ekam Sadvipraha Bahudha Vadanti, that one truth, at the deep level, there's one truth that the wise call by many names. And I started seeing in other traditions and texts glimpses of a very common, deep, profound teaching. And I've given some examples there. One of the ones I really liked was Marcus Aurelius, emperor, who was a Stoic, who basically said the power, you have the power to control what's within you, not what's outside. The world's going to come and go, but if you create the right inner conditions, that's how you can manage and live a life of purpose. Persian poetry, Farsi poetry. You know, it's like what the Ghalib, you must have heard of Mirza Ghalib. You're asking, why isn't he up in the Urdu section? Well, Ghalib himself thought his Urdu verses were meh, and that his deepest, most profound teachings were in his Farsi poetry. He was inspired by a Farsi Indian poet, probably the greatest Indian Persian poet from India, called Bedil. And it said that Bedil had a copy of Yoga Vasishtha, a great Sanskrit Vedanta text, when he wrote. He wrote 16 volumes, 140,000 verses. I'll give you one as an example, and it's a theme we'll come on to, which is it gives a very profound insight as to why leaders should be humble. He says, Sajde khak ast. Sajde khak, don't worry, I'll translate the Persian, don't worry. Aule izade gadun. Prostration before the dust is the greatest honor the sky can give. You know, sky's up here, dust down here. In an horizon, they meet as if the sky is touching the feet of the dust. Why? Khwaja che darat, agar ghulam na darat. What is a master to do if there's no one to follow them? You are a master, a leader, because people have chosen to follow you. So be grateful for that, acknowledge that. You know, prostrate in front of those following you. It's an honor they're giving. It's such a beautiful sentiment Vidya gives us. And there are many others down here. You know, Musashi was considered an undefeated samurai warrior. He wrote a book, the Book of Five Rings, to summarize his philosophy on life. You read it, you think you're reading a Vedantic text. And he has a great line which says, practice for 1,000 days to forge yourself. Right? Practice for 1,000 days to forge yourself. What do they say? 10,000 hours to become a master at something. He said, no, practice for 1,000 days to forge yourself. Practice for 10,000 days to refine yourself. So step one is just to give you the basic kind of ingredients, but then work on it, refine it, deepen it. And for some reason, maybe it was my Nana's training, I read this stuff, and it's stuck, and it's like, I need to put this into practice. Many of us, we read something wise, it comes in one ear, it goes out the other, and then we get back to watching, you know, The White Lotus or something on television. Somehow, once you read and you listen and you learn, it sticks. Nandaji said something to me when we were studying. He said, you may go somewhere, see a book, it'll look interesting. You may not read it immediately. One day you'll read it, just buy it. So, I mean, apologies to my wife and family, I have all these books lying around. But again, sometimes you're trying to find something, and a book I bought 20 years ago, it's like, I found what I wanted. Those are my inspirations. You'll have your own. Find them. Keep them. Internalize them. Think of Musashi, right? Practice for 1,000 days to forge yourself. First make yourself, then practice for 10,000 days to refine yourself. Just go to the next slide. And let's talk about this. First, so I just mentioned that first point of grounding yourself with this insatiable curiosity to learn through that relentless pursuit of knowledge. Being curious in life, we have it as children, we somehow lose it. I was listening to the podcast of this theoretical physicist, Leonard Susskind, one of the fathers of string theory, and he was asked about one of his colleagues, Nobel Prize winner, Gerard 't Hooft. He's a Dutch physicist. He said, tell me about him. And he said, the amazing thing about that guy, he's insanely curious about everything. He just wants to learn. He just wants to grab knowledge. There's a wonderful verse by Bharatiya that talks about the wealth of knowledge as the greatest wealth of all. Nachora haryam, it can't be stolen by a thief. Nacharaja haryam, it can't be taken as taxes. Na bhratra bhajyam, it can't be divided amongst brothers as inheritance. Nacha bharakari, it's not a burden. Sometimes wealth is a burden. Vyaye krite vardhata eva nityam. If you've got a pile of cash and you spend it, what happens to the pile? It goes down. What happens to your knowledge when you spend it, meaning use it? It grows. So Vidya dhanam sarva dhana pradhanam. That relentless pursuit of knowledge. And that true knowledge, we've seen, dadati vinayam, gives you humility. One of the greatest journeys in life is to just know yourself. This Urdu verse, pehle ye ki tum kisi se milo, apne andar ke aadmi se milo. Before you meet anyone in this world, meet the person inside. We teach a lot now in modern leadership courses, training, the ability to introspect, but it's seen as a bit on the fringe. But there's nothing more powerful than being candid with who you are, what you're good at, and what you're not good at. And we don't spend enough time really understanding and getting to know us and what we love. And we can, you know, when we train young managers now, there's ways to help people understand who they really are and what they want to be. And having that life mission, having a view, you know, life, when you look back on your life, what do you want to be said about it? That's quite hard when you're younger, but as we age, I think all of us say, well, what impact are we going to leave? So we used to run a young managers course. I see some youngsters here, and we gave them, to quote John Wick, an impossible task, which was just imagine your life is a book with a series of chapters of events in your life. What do you want the title of that book to be? Just as a way to get people thinking about how they want to show up in life. I hope you don't mind me mentioning you, Sonia, my daughter, but you know, when she left college, she got numbers of offers, well, to be sales in Czechoslovakia or somewhere, and I think you had a sense what you wanted to, how you wanted to live your life, and you stood out for the right role. I mean, hats off. I just wanted to earn some money leaving university. I think I found my work purpose much later. I think this generation are a bit more tuned to this, and there's various tools and exercises to help you. But, you know, living one's life as a sacred offering to a higher purpose is one of the deepest teachings of our traditions, the Gita. It's in this quote, Yajñātāt karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara. You may do things in life other than yajña, but do them for yajña, as an offering. When you look back on your life, you can ask one of two questions. What did I take from this world, or what did I give from this world? Trust me, as you go on in life, you want to answer the question, what did I give to this world? Well, think about corporate life. If the only goal is financial goal, that doesn't give people the engagement, the why behind the what. We'll talk about it. Some of the greatest leaders, institutions, gave a purpose beyond profit that united organizations. Matsushita, one of the greatest Japanese entrepreneurs, gave his organizations the mission after the Second World War. Our job is to rebuild Japan and be a force for good in society. Sipla, I think there's some Siplites in the audience. Our founder was a follower of Mahatma Gandhi. You show up to work saying you're doing Gandhi's work. It's way more powerful than saying we'll beat total shareholder returns of the S&P 500 by 5%. You need to do that stuff. But if you can't give a deeper purpose, you're not going to have sustained engagement. And the heart of a lot of this is mind training. How many of you go to the gym every week? A few of you? Usually in English audience, more people put their hands up. In this audiences, it's roughly about that. Yeah, that's about right. How many of you go to the gym of the mind? A few of you. Good. We need more. Krishna says, Asamshayam mahabaho manaha durnigraham jalam. Without doubt, the mind is hard to grasp and wonders. However, abhyasena tukante, through mind training, vairagyena, dispassion jagrihyate. Mindfulness techniques, training, strengthens the mind. And the power of mind training we see more and more central to the journey in life, but also of great leadership. We did a podcast recently with Sri Ravi Shankar. I don't know if all of you got it. Please have a look. And he talks about the power of meditation there. And the last one is, if you want people to thrive, you want them to show up as themselves. For them to show up as themselves, you have to show up as yourself. We often put a corporate armor into work, right? I did that for years, and I remember having a discussion with this great coach called Eki, and I talk about, I do all this stuff at work, and I have this dark side. I'm a teacher, and he said, why two Subhanus? Why aren't you bringing that to work? You'd be surprised how many people will want to see the whole you. I had someone working for me, and I found out that he liked loud, heavy metal music like I did, Bill. And so I said, look, we're going to see Metallica in Zurich. Yes, we like Metallica. And he joined us, and he had an earring. And I said, oh, Bill, what's that? He said, yeah, I wear this earring, ever since I was young. He said, why don't you wear it to work? And he said, I don't know. I said, no, bring it to work. He's now been a very successful CEO for years. But if you don't show up as yourself, there's zero chance others in the organization will. They'll feel they'll have to put on a mask, an armor. And you don't want people showing up with an armor. You want them to showing up as who they are. Just go to the next slide. And this combines this mastery of self and this purpose, being able to work extremely in an outward active way and inward inactive. Krishna mentions it. I won't give the full verse. Karmanya karma yaf. I can't help it. When I start, it just flows. Yaf pashyeda karmani jayar karmaya. So buddhiman manushyeshu so yuktah kritsna karma krita. He who sees inaction in action, action in inaction. That is a wise person. You can be intensely active, but supremely calm and centered. That's what the mind training does for you. That's what infusing your heart with unconditional loving kindness and compassion, even in the toughest of situations, does for you. You're creating certain inner conditions and inner strength for you to take on the world. And that spirit of service and sacrifice and everything. In Upanishads, many of you must have seen that. I think it sits above the Chief Justice. Satyameva jayate. I say in work, you've got to be a truth warrior. You always have to get to the bottom of an issue. You can't just let it slide. This is a fundamental concept in our traditions. Truth is paramount. Such ghate, such badhe ya ghate, to such na rahe. If you tweak it up or down, it's no longer truth. Jhoot ki koi intiha hi nahi. You can just keep saying falsehoods, but truth is precise. Seek it out in everything you do. Being that truth warrior. Here's a very important lesson. That when you build that inside, you learn that it's not just what you say, but how you say it. Manu says in Manusmriti, Satyam bruyat, priyam bruyat. Speak truth, but speak it kindly. Na bruyat satyam apriyam. Don't speak a truth harshly. Priyancha na anratam bruyat. Equally, don't speak a lie because it sounds good. Esha dharmas sanatanaha. Because, you meet people say, I call it as it is. Yeah, you can call it as it is, but you have to call the other person an idiot when you do it. This leadership style of tough on the issue, soft on the person goes a long way, and it's embedded here in this verse. And think about it, there's a famous experiment that was done when people showed up with different energies. People didn't really hear the words, they heard how it came across. And that's what they reacted to. So ask yourself, when you step in a room and then step out, have you left it with more or less energy, regardless of what you said? What energy did you bring? What did you leave with those? That's often how you speak. Krishna, he never shirked from saying what needed to be said, but how he said it. One example I always love is in when he comes as the messenger of peace. Duryodhana wants him to stay with him so he can bribe him and persuade him, to convince him that let us keep the kingdom. And Krishna says simply, I'm going to stay with Vidya. And Duryodhana goes, no, a false show of being upset. And Krishna says, Sampriti bhojanyan nani apad bhojani vapunaha nacha sampriyase rajam nache vapat katavayam. Meaning you should stay for food with someone who loves you or in times of calamity. You don't love me, and we're not in calamity. I ain't staying with you. He said it. But he didn't call Duryodhana an idiot. He didn't, he just said it. That's why I love Krishna. He says what's needed, but he knew how to say it. And you can train yourself for this. If you're mindful of these points, you'll think about how you show up, what you say. Ask yourself 2 questions when you leave a room. First, how did that person experience me? But here's the important second question. How did they experience themselves? You ever ask that? You just go in, you drop the truth bomb and leave and let them figure it out. It's pretty normal. Say, it's pretty smart in there. Well, what are they going to do with it? Were they elated or deflated after your discussion? And having that clear vision with life goals, I think if you show up, we're blessed here that we have some choice. Even in tough times, I would argue, especially in tough times, let your kids do what they love. Don't force them to try something they won't, because they'll never get anywhere. We're not here having to just take anything to avoid starvation. Use that to do something that fuels your passion. It doesn't matter if you're not a doctor or an accountant. There are many ways you can contribute to the world. So this understanding how you want to show up, what legacy you want to leave, is very important. Next slide, please. And this is the typical chain and where the Shastras help us work. And Krishna gives us this cause and effect. He says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. When you think of things in this world, sangas teshu pajayate. You get attached to them. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. You get attached to something, then you desire it. Kamat krodho bijayate. When you don't get what you want, you get angry, frustrated. Krodhad bhavati sammohaha. Anger leads to confusion. Sammohat smriti vibramaha. Your memory goes to pot. You can't remember what's good or bad. You blame someone for something they never did. Smriti bhramshad buddhinashaha. Your intellect's gone. Buddhinashad pranashyati. So being able to kind of be in this world but not of it helps you avoid this simple cause and effect trap. Next page. So if you just want to cover some of the teachings from the Gita, I've mentioned the first 4. I want to focus on the last one. That one of the words we have for a wise person, it's how Rama is described. At the start of the Ramayana, basically Valmiki is wondering, who's the perfect role model person in this day and age? And Narada comes and he asks him that question, Kon vasmin sampratam loke gunavan kasti viryavan dharmagyascha kritagyascha satyavakyo dridhavrata, who's firm of resolve, always speaks the truth, full of qualities. In the description given, one word is shrutavan, one who listens well. Not one who talks a lot, like me, one who listens. And, there's something that I've noticed over the years. We train people as they go through their careers to be decisive, judgmental, to make the smart moves. There's a point, particularly when you become a CEO, when you want to find out what the hell is going on. You're sitting there in your CEO's office, everyone's coming with their spin on something. What's really going on? You need to be able to ask purposeful, probing questions first to understand a situation. When I hire board members and create boards for companies, I look for that. You don't want the board member who wants just to show up and just put all their knowledge on the table and just hog the conversation. But someone who's genuinely curious, see that word again? To ask and understand an issue and then give the feedback and help make it better. That's a Shrutavan. So, be a wise listener, not a smart talker. Next page. And those character traits, are given there as, as a leader with self-control. Before you can lead others, you kind of need to lead yourself. Have you heard that before? If you haven't, it's a very important teaching. And Arjuna asks Krishna this question, why do we go astray? Atakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. Why do people make errors in life? Anitchanapi varshneya baladiva niyojitaha. We may know a path is wrong, but we somehow go down it. Why does that happen? He asked this question. And Krishna says, Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava, mahashano mahapapma vidyaina miha vairinam. That desire and anger, that's at the root of it. That's what leads you astray. Work on those. Mind training. Fill your heart with love and compassion. Live a life of giving and service. That's what eradicates these things. Right? And that gives you those character traits that we just talked about. Right? Next page. And there are lots of examples. I've talked a bit about Krishna. I'm going to come back to Bhishma. I talked about Janakya. Vivekananda was another huge inspiration for me. Those of you know Vivekananda's story. Growing up, he would just somehow at the age of 5, 6, just see a bright light and be lost in trance. He didn't know what it was. He wanted to learn more about life. And he wanted to find the right teacher. So he would go and hear these gurus speaking, and he would ask them a simple question at the end to test them. So have you seen God? And he'd get some fluffy answer back. Useless. He came across Ramakrishna. And he asked Ramakrishna, Sir, have you seen God? And Ramakrishna looked him in the eye and said, Yes, I see him more clearly than I see you. But why talk of such things? People have no interest in understanding that deep insight. And he thought, there's someone here. And he stayed and he stayed. And that surrender suddenly came to him. Vivekananda trained as a lawyer, I believe. He had precision and economy of language. His works, even today, speak to us. And I had a German boss who had an interest in Indian philosophy, Thomas Eberling, wonderful guy. He would call me Swami as a term of endearment, and he would say, Swami, I'm off to try and see Sai Baba, maybe I'll see him. I said, great, go ahead, best of luck. I gave him a copy of Swami Vivekananda's lectures in 1896 called Practical Vedanta, how to practically apply the Vedanta teachings. He gave 4 lectures in Lahore. Thomas loved it so much, he gave it to the whole leadership team. He said, forget your slides, read this. But Vivekananda, all his works are online. You can open randomly at any page, anything he wrote, and you'll find something for your thought for the day. And we've talked about what that leads in terms of a way of seeing life and living your life. Next page. And I just want to share some examples. I was a bond trader. What's the first thing you learn as a bond trader? Have no ego about your position, cut your losses. If you stick with a position because you think you're going to look stupid, you'll lose a ton of money. And how many examples do you remember? People who wrote the chits, left them in the drawer, huge write-offs, Barings Bank and others over the years. No ego. A negotiator. I spent a lot of time negotiating around the world. I negotiated a big inward investment into Russia. I've done global deals. And you show up with your ego, you ain't going to get the best result. You may think you are. You may think you can bully yourself the other side. Well, the golden rule is, do you have an alternative? If you don't build an alternative before you step into a room, you're always going to get railroaded. I see that a bit in global negotiations right now. Equally, negotiating across cultures requires a bit of finesse. You can't apply the same approach in Latin America to Japan. You have to think about the other person. The simplest way I always think about it is, whoever's across the table has to sell this deal to their boss and write a press release. Are they going to be embarrassed explaining it to their boss? No matter how good a deal I think it is, if they're going to be embarrassed explaining it to their board or someone, ain't going to happen. You can't put yourself in the middle of it. Career planning, in our negotiation course in INSEAD, Ingemar Dierix, he is one of the most impactful courses I did at INSEAD. He did a very simple thought experiment. Let's say you take a job where it's a stepping stone to something else. And the cubicle next to you is someone who just loves what they're doing. Guess who'll put in the extra hours? Guess who's going to go further? Just don't take roles as a stepping stone to something else. If you're not getting energy out of it, just don't do it. And that stuck with me a lot over the years. And in conflict resolution, we often want to be right all the time. Sometimes you need to take a step back so you can take a step forward. I was lucky to get trained by ex-MI6 folks. I won't tell you when or how. I may have to shoot you. But they talked about, if you don't share, you'll never get, no one will share anything back with you. And sometimes it's okay to share something vulnerable or be able to admit a mistake and step back so you can move forward. So I found a lot of this resonated with what I learned about where I come from, how I show up from the teachings. And we all have those experiences of enjoying something for what it is. This karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, Krishna says. You have a right to act, but not to the fruits of your action. Ma karma phalaheturbhu ma te sangosta karmani. Also, that's not a reason to sit around and do nothing. You have to act, right? But we've all had moments where we were just present in the moment and didn't care about the result. There's a lot of research that the greatest joy you get is by giving to others, actually, not yourself. Or a great hobby. You can be lost in the moment with something, whatever it is. And at that moment, you think about the payoff, the bonus you get because you're doing something you love. No, well, imagine you bring that energy to what you do at work and allow others to do the same, what it unlocks. And one of the core things we learn is what drives performance is engagement. This is not fluffy stuff. Highly engaged organizations with high engagement scores perform better for longer. The way you engage people is they see a purpose in what they're doing that aligns with what they want to be. They can show up as who they want to be, and they're working on things that make them want to have fun. And there's a joy to it. You can't have that every day, sure, good and bad days. Things will work, things will not work. We'll come on to that. There's a wonderful quote on that. But you all have these experiences. You maybe just haven't realized them. Or string them together and make them part of more of your life. Next page. And some of those implications then, if you really wanted just to be able to relate it, enjoying work for what it is, not what it gets you, making fun a central part of career planning. If you don't show up showing you're having fun, no one around you will, by the way. Right? This balance comes when you're able to align your work and your personal purpose. Don't forget the gym of the mind as well as of the body. being curious and listening. Rigveda, Ano, O Bhadra, Kratavo, Yanto, Vishvataha is the motto of the Bhavan, that noble thoughts come to us from every side. Thomas gave me this advice. I was sent in to turn around a business that hadn't hit a budget for 10 years. Everyone told me it was career suicide. I figured one of the other learnings I'd had over the years working in Russia was you need to know the worst case. And if you can survive the worst case, it's probably a risk you may want to take. Otherwise, don't take it. So I figured, what's the worst case of turning around this business? So my kids get education in the UK. I get to spend more time with my parents. Yeah, if I get fired, at least I'm back there, not stuck in some market in the middle of nowhere. But Thomas, as I was going to turn around this business, said, Swami, speak to 5 people before you make a decision. Don't react to the last thing you heard. It's a call to be a good listener. How many of you react to the last WhatsApp message that says, pineapples make your skin go yellow? You get those on your family WhatsApp, someone reads it, passes it on. It must be true, I got it on the WhatsApp. Oh my God. Happens at work. What's the most classic one? Email comes in, it's happened a few times, from a customer or an external party complaining about a team member of yours. The witch hunt starts immediately. Hey, did you verify what's come? Are you believing someone outside of your organization and your own people? How many times has that happened? Oh, an email went to the chairman complaining about this person's behavior at this event. Oh, before you fire them, go and speak to them, go and speak to other people. This speak to 5 people is one of the greatest teachings I was ever given. Vasella, the chairman, he gave me another teaching when I went for this role. He said, clear head, tough hand, warm heart. It was a tough turnaround, but clarity of vision. When you need to make the tough calls, make them, but do them with compassion. We had to let 30% of head office go to restructure. You can still treat people as adults when you do these things. And it was a very important lesson of mine. And a lot of these teachings helped me in those difficult moments. Next page. This being a lifelong learner, this is one of Gandhi's favorite quotes. You may have heard him. People talk about learners, you live forever. Live as if you could die tomorrow. Meaning you have all the time in the world to learn, but to do good, you may not be here tomorrow. Do it now. He was quoting a Sanskrit verse. Ajaramaravat pragyaha vidyamarthancha chintayet grihita eva kesheshu mrityuna dharmamacharet. You have all the time in the world to acquire wealth and learn. But as if grihita eva kesheshu mrityuna, as if death is holding you by the hair, taking you now. Dharmamacharet, do dharma now. So that lifelong learning, making knowledge, making curiosity of a core competence. The great innovative companies of this world, people are naturally curious. They're not afraid to let people try things out. How do they manage the risk? They ask the worst case. So Richard Branson had a simple rule. Did you know what it was for new businesses? He would say, I'll risk 1 month's cash flow. I'm happy to write off 1 month's cash flow, no problem. When we took the turnaround plan for Russia to the chairman of PepsiCo, Roger Enrico, we prepared a 100-page presentation. How are we going to turn around a business losing $100 million a year? This was 20 years ago. We got to the 3rd page, he said, stop, tell me how bad can it get? I was the finance guy, they turned to me. He said, well, you could sink $500 million and see nothing back. He said, I bet $1 billion on casual dining in the US for a $30 billion company. We can take those bets. Approved. Now show me the milestones along the way and how you're going to course correct. It was an amazing learning. Here's a very important one. Everyone has a gift. Often leaders show up and leave by saying, that person was great, that person was useless, like a pass-fail. Some leaders are great at pointing out the weaknesses in others. Some people show up to point out the problems. How well? It'd be nice if they showed up with the solutions. But everyone has a strength in them, a gift. As a leader, you train to find that gift and exploit it. The Sanskrit verse says, amantram aksharam nasti. There's no such letter that cannot become a sacred mantra. Nasti moolam anoshadham. There is no plant that cannot become a life-saving medicine. Ayogyav purusho nasti. There's no such thing as an unworthy person. Everyone has a gift. Everything has inherent latent potential. Yojakaha. Whoever can bring that out. Tatra dullabha. Such a person is rare, be that person. And those are the techniques of appreciative inquiry. And you combine that with being a coach, training someone to be a coach. It's a formidable combination. We trained our plant managers at Cipla, over 40 plants, these techniques of appreciative inquiry. The speak up, the ability to find solutions, build on what works, totally was transformed after we did that. It's a very powerful approach, and it's rooted in this verse. I heard one of these great example of this recently. Many of you may know Sir Patrick Stewart, Star Trek, Next Generation Shakespearean actor. He said in an interview that he wasn't great at school. There was a time, many of you may remember, you were smart, you went to grammar school. You didn't quite make the grade, you went to secondary modern. He went to secondary modern school. He was in an English class. I think the teacher's name was Cecil Goodman, I think was the name. And he's dedicated his book to him and another teacher who gave him something to read, some Shakespeare or something. As he was reading it, he said, I couldn't understand the words, but something connected. The teacher spotted it. There's something in this person, and he encouraged his love of Shakespeare, and he became a great Shakespearean actor. Many of us may remember a teacher that transformed us. Oh, as a leader, you're a teacher. You spend time, you train yourself when you show up in a meeting to spot the gift in others and find out how to refine it, musashi. Would you show up, say, I need this answer to go to my board. Okay, yeah, answer for, he didn't do a good job. She did a good job, he didn't do a good job. That's a very transactional way of leadership. There is an invitation for a deeper leadership muscle. And that's an example. Guess what? In life, blank happens. Ups and downs. This is normal. I often say when we do our Ganesha Puja, that the prayer to Ganesha is not that may only good things happen in life. If you live life, life's going to happen. But how do you take it all as an opportunity to become a better person? So there's that shloka, Dukkama patitam sevyam sukhama patitam datha chakravat parivartante dukkhani cha sukhani cha. Happiness and sadness will come and go like on a wheel. What does it mean? Well, we often train and select for IQ. Then people talk about EQ when they make decisions. Well, how many of you select for agility and resilience? How many of you train people? How many of you give opportunities early in life for people to fail, to build resilience so they can take on anything? You know, that's an important lesson. And then this final one, balance. Samatvam yoga uchyate. True yoga is balance, Krishna tells us. Being that centered leader, all of these practices help you become centered in a storm. And are you the person that calms and settles, or that creates chaos? And we've all known leaders that create chaos. Sometimes they say productive chaos is good. Yeah, for a bit. But people want to just be able to show up and do a good day's work. Very people want to show up and burn the world. You know, we assume 99% of people at work are not psychopaths. They want to do a good job. Well, build on that. The next page. Chanakya. We talked about Chanakya earlier. I think you should be able to see a number of the principles. The two in the middle I want to focus on here is the spirit of yajna means always working towards the greater welfare. And are you asking that question relentlessly in everything you do? Matsushita would talk about how organizations are a force for good. in the world. You know, whatever we may say about globalization and so on, they provide jobs, they provide earning, tax revenue. A leader that has in their mind that their job is to work for the greater good shows up differently. Arthashastra, nata priyam hitam rajyaha, prajanam tu hitam priyam. They don't show up wanting to serve their needs. They're there serving the greater needs. And here's a wonderful quote. I won't read the full quote, I can provide it later, about the leader as a gardener, rehabilitating the uprooted ones, nurturing the blooming ones, strengthening the weak, bending down the tall. You know, sometimes you've got to pull people back, and so on. There's some great kind of quotes. And the last one is important. Your power as a leader doesn't come from your title. You cannot get thousands of people to follow you just because you're the boss. You have to engage them with a deeper kind of place of wisdom and knowledge. Vidvatvam jan nripatantam jan naiva tulyam kadachana. Never equate knowledge and power equally. Swadeshe pujyate raja. A king is worshipped in their own land. Vidwan, a wise person, sarvatra pujyate, is worshipped everywhere they show up. Build an inner core of knowledge, wisdom, humility, love. Next page. Now we get interesting. I talked about Shanti Parva for the last 5 minutes. We're nearly done. Hopefully we're not running over. There are many great texts, many great leaders. Bhishma Pitama is called the great preceptor. He finally falls in battle. He had the power to control the end of his life. He was waiting for a specific moment. What was that? End of the war, they're gathering up all of the dead. And the Pandavas think they've got all of their side. And Kunti puts her hand up, says, "You missed somebody." "Who have we missed?" He said, "Well, my son." "Hang on, we're all here." 5. "No, my other son, Karna. He was your son. He was your brother. He was your eldest brother. Yudhishthira is distraught." He said, "You made us slaughter hundreds of thousands of people. Well, my eldest brother, I'd have just given him the kingdom. What were you doing?" He's absolutely distraught, and he says, "I'm not going to rule." And he walks off. Krishna, everyone tries to console him. He's heartbroken. Krishna says, "You need to speak to one person." That's why he's there, Bhishma. So the end of the war is one of the greatest chapters of the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva, Shanti, man ki Shanti ke liye, to settle Yudhishthira. And it has 3 sections. One's for Raja Dharma, how to lead in normal times. Then there's a section, Apad Dharma, how to lead in abnormal times. In Raja Dharma, he has some great simple bits of guidance. How should you collect taxes? Well, the way a bee collects honey from a flower. Enough to nourish themselves, but it doesn't destroy the flower. Amazing stories. And again, some stories not to be repeated in front of young children. The sacred and profane. He covers all aspects of human existence. Shanti Parva is 12,000 verses alone. Half the length of the Ramayana. And one day, if I ever have the capability and the ability, many have written books on Shanti Parva. I want to write my own book on Shanti Parva and the teachings. But he has a section on leading in abnormal times, which I thought may be interesting and relevant. What did he have to say when, everything goes to pieces? Well, first of all, everything you learn about dharma and what we've heard before, don't throw that out. But he talks about yoga as strategy. These yogas, these ways of living, these ways of going, helping you form a strategic mind and a view of the future and being able to lay out different outcomes. And it gives a very different to the description of Krishna. He's called Yogeshwara, Lord of Yoga. In the Mahabharata battle, he was Lord of Strategy. Yoga as strategy. There's more to be said about that. That phrase, "go where the knowledge lies," was taught to me by Mr. Hamid Tsipla. When he said, whenever we went to the plants, he would first go and speak to the janitor, because they saw everyone coming in and out. In the fog of war, you really need to know who to go to and how to triangulate information. This don't react to the last thing. The ability to triangulate and having the right advisors becomes central when things are tough. And the best example I know is the Cuban Missile Crisis, where President Kennedy created the XCOM. He said, I want everyone in that room, even if I don't agree with them, because I want all views on the table. If I make a wrong move, it's the end of the world. Can't afford that. I want, wherever they are, wake them up, bring them. And he put all the best advisors in a room of all contrarian, on side, so he could find the best answer. Having alliances, and you have to work on those from before things happen. You know, I think we're living in a world where one party feels the alliances elsewhere are weak and I can break them up. How do you invest time to build really strong alliances for those that will matter when things get tough? Equally, when you've got to move, move. Delaying is death. You've got to act. And the example given a bit later, this indecision is the decision. When the time came, Krishna said to Arjuna, finish them off. You just got to, you cannot wait. Your time to act is less when things are tough. We speak about satya, satyavadi and being truthful. Well, can you be deceitful in some situations? Well, if it's for a higher purpose, it said if it's focusing on the greater good, it may have a place. Atmanaf prana rakshartham, one is to protect the self. Dharmasyodharanaya, or to uplift dharma. Patnim bandham jarajanam, to protect one's partner, one's family, or the kingdom. Mrishavadi na dushyati, some deception is okay. The point about agility we talked about earlier. Plans can change. Jack Welch would talk about a plan is only good as first contact with the enemy. If you guys are building 5-year strategic plans, forget it. Waste of time. One of my bosses said all your forecasts are precisely incorrect. Have milestones where you are course correction points and learn how to course correct. But don't waste time on building something that you know is going to change. Controlling the narrative. I feel a lot of what I see in the world is because the narrative is controlled by certain groups and not by others. Having that inner steel, it will be tested, but there's disciplines of self-mastery give you that strong foundation. I won't read the rest of them out. The 0 point is a very interesting one. When something goes wrong, the seeds were probably sown well before. Use your training, viveka, to spot when that happens, to catch it early. Just go to the next. So there's a lot to be said about Shanti Bhattva. Maybe we do a whole lecture on Shanti Bhattva at some point. I won't read all of this out. Maybe we'll give this as handouts to people. But if you look at the end, this point we made earlier, that Swami Vivekananda was one of the, he led the Ramakrishna mission. Everyone has to learn the lesson someday, that the best way to be happy is to strive to make others happy. It's a very profound, deep learning. Next page. You can find this online, but again, some of the great leaders, Matsushita as well, was inspired by this poem by this Jewish poet, Samuel Ullman, where he talks about having that childlike wonder in everything you do so that you may die young at 80. It's a beautiful poem. I encourage you all to read it. Next page. We can do this some other time, but there's the final instruction in the Upanishads is this practical teaching how to put this into practice. It's Shikshavalli. Maybe we'll do a separate session on Shikshavalli. Go to the next page. Some final thoughts. And again, you know, it's very easy and hard to be a leader or a parent. Whatever you want your kids to be, you have to be that person. Whatever you want your organization to be, you have to be that person. Those are some of the lessons that we talked about in this talk. And can that spiritual journey and that outward journey be one? Well, Gandhi gave us the answer. He said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. That's been a illuminating guide for me for years. I've just put on the next page just some books, practical Vedantas there, that I found inspirational on some of these topics. The one on the right, I was interviewed for that book, Leading with Present Spirit and Authenticity. You may find it interesting. It talks about being a mindful leader. And I just want to leave you with this final quote on the last page. If you know you're Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. You can use your leadership for good or bad. So, Vidya vivadaya dhanam madaya shakti paresham paripidanaya. How do the ignorant or the mischievous use their vidya, their knowledge? They use it for conflict, for arguing. Dhanam madaya, their wealth for intoxication. Shakti, they use their power, paresham paripidanaya, to cause pain to others. But kalasya sadho, but a wise person, viparitame, that uses them for the opposite. For what? Jnanaya, to bring wisdom. Dhanaya, so knowledge for wisdom. Dhanam, not for madaya, but for dhanaya, for charity. And power, not for pain, but for protecting. With that, I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.
Friends, this brings us to the concluding part of the event today, the Birla Memorial Lecture, and after which you're all invited for dinner in our Hathi Hall. Thank you, Shankar. Now I request a dear friend of Bhavan for over 30 years, somebody who has been serving on our education committee, Aparna Nathan, Casey, and a leading tax lawyer in this country, to kindly come and propose vote of thanks on behalf of all of us, Aparna Nathan.
So I'm going to keep this short because I don't think anyone should follow a speech as good as that. It was a thought-provoking, insightful, very carefully curated speech. One of the things you said was, if we leave this room with one thought which is new to us, or that triggers some interest, you've done well. Well, I think a lot of us will have picked up a lot more than one thought. And just by way of example, when it came to Gita lessons, the number 5 that you focused on, wisdom comes from listening, and that was a theme throughout. That was something as barristers we don't do very often, so it's something that I will certainly take away. And then there was 2 that came in under values of a great leader. Be a truth warrior, because truth is paramount, but, and this is the important qualifier, speak truth kindly, which is, again, something that some of us perhaps, certainly in my profession, would be well to remember. The idea of how we can, just by having thought and listened to you, make the change in our lives is actually quite a profound thought. And while we can't change the world, we can certainly start trying to change things around us. So be the energy that we want to see. So thank you. Please can we all put our hands together in the traditional way. Thank you, Bhavan. We have a little token of appreciation for you.
Shankar? Thank you.